So I'm going to ask a couple of questions first and then open it
Okay.
to the crowd here.
Thank you very much for sticking through.
First off, I mean, interesting suddenly seeing the thanks first before you see the cast. You've got Don Coscarelli, the director of Phantasm on Bubba Ho-Tep, and Bruce Campbell thanked.
Yeah.
Why for?
You know, without them, I wouldn't really have been able to make the movie. Because, and in fact, if you watch Bubba Ho-Tep, you'll notice that all of the interior Camden College scenes and even some of the exteriors are the same locations as Don's film, Bubba Ho-Tep, the old folks' home there. And what happened was, I was trying to get the movie made, and I was trying to figure out a way to make it, and I had very, very little money to make the film. And and so I went and visited Don, and Don has like his pulse on all of the really good scams. And there was, in California, there's nothing like telefilm here. It's a sort of, you get the money, you make the movie on your own. There's no assistance at all. But at the time, there was a very small program that was very little known called Film California First, and it was trying to stop runaway production to Canada. And as long as you as long as you shot on county or state property, California would reimburse those location expenses and permits and things like that. And so I went and I visited Don on his set, and he started telling me about this program, and I was like, oh my God. And then I started looking around the set while they were shooting, and I realized, and it was this old rehabilitation hospital in Downey, kind of, it had been condemned, and there was just like this giant campus of condemned buildings. And so I realized, oh my God, I can plant my production here. And to keep a production cheap, what you try to do is you try to do as few company moves as possible. And so I just parked the company on this place, and I shot the entire movie at this rehabilitation hospital. They had a hospital for the hospital I needed. They had like spaces that were like dorm rooms. The place was haunted too. People had hanged themselves, and it was like this awful nightmare place to shoot because everything was toxic, and the place had been condemned. There was asbestos everywhere. We just kind of went for it. And so it had Don kind of introduced me to the place and also to the program. And without him, I really wouldn't have been able to make the movie because Lionsgate had given me so little money to do it.
And can you talk about...
Thank you, Don, wherever you are.
And can you talk a little bit about the shooting of the End of the World party and when that happened?
In fact, this year will be it's hard to believe, the 10th anniversary of this film. And when we were shooting, it's like I would drive into the set every day, and so I get in the car and I'm driving in and I turn on the radio and I hear Howard Stern was on the radio, and he's freaking out. He was like, oh my God, he was like talking about going to war, and I couldn't figure out what the hell it was that they were talking about. And I arrive on set, and I walk up to and we were shooting in Koreatown, the End of the World party, in this, the interiors of the whole party at the end of and beginning of the movie. And I arrive, and I walk, and there's a crowd of people. The whole crew is kind of huddled around the craft service truck, and there's a TV in the craft service truck. And I walk up, and that's when I see the Twin Towers falling, or one of them at least. And I was like, oh shit, oh no, it's like, it's like this complete disaster, it's like Pearl Harbor happening in the middle of your shoot. And my first thought was, how do I keep shooting? It's like, what do I do? And so I turned to my crew. Many of them were freaking out. And to make a long story short, the studio wouldn't give us the day, and like I said, the movie was made for very little money. We couldn't really afford it, and in fact, we were flying Vanderbeek back and forth from North Carolina to Dawson's Creek, and so it was like he would shoot there, and then finish up in the middle of the night and catch a red eye back to LA, quickly shower, and then we would start shooting, and then we would put him on a plane, and he would go back, and he would shoot a few days there, and that was kind of how we were making the film. Fortunately, he was with us when it happened, and they freezed all the flights, and I hate to say it, but it actually kind of helped us because we didn't have to fly him back anymore. He just stayed with us for the duration of the shoot. But it really became about, and this is, I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's a testament to the kind of mindset that you get in when you're making a film that you really care about, that nothing else matters. You stop thinking about anything else in the world. You just think about, how am I going to get what I need on film? And how am I going to get this shot? And I turned to my crew, because the company wouldn't give us the day, the money to call it a day, to allow everyone to go home. The insurance company wouldn't allow it. They said it's not an act of God. The unions wouldn't call it. And so basically, I figured out, okay, if everybody leaves, who do I absolutely need to stay here to shoot this? And my DP would stay, and I had a couple of people who, Vanderbeek was fine. I basically turned to everybody and said, listen, it's an industry. If you feel that you can't do your job safely, then by all means go home, and I'll see you when you're ready to come back. However, I'm going to keep shooting, no matter what. And I guarantee you, there is no safer place to be in the world right now than Koreatown, which is where we were shooting, that location. And so the crew kind of got together, and they did like a little vote, like a union vote, where they decided what to do. And they went ahead and allowed me to continue shooting for that day, and we agreed to stop shooting, I think, about 3 hours early. And so I cut a lot of scenes. However, the movie used to end differently. It used to be just about how locked into Manifest Destiny we are, and for some reason on that day I had Vanderbeek turn around and walk out, kind of altering in some way the Manifest Destiny of the film. I don't know, I started off the movie believing that time is a fixed thing, and then I left the movie believing that we actually can change, we can change destiny. And so it was a bad thing. Having said that, everything went right on this film. Like I said, we had so little money to make it, and it was all about nothing really. We couldn't afford for anything to go wrong. And amazingly, everything went right every day, and everything that shouldn't have gone right went right. And so, including something horrible like 9/11 happening. So there was an earthquake actually the day before. Nobody remembers. In Los Angeles, there was this huge earthquake while we were shooting, and so every day shooting that end of the world party felt like the end of the world. Yeah. It was a long time.
Do we have any questions?
Any questions from anybody?
Yeah.
The visuals are a big part of the film, obviously. I just had a question for you in terms of when you were conceptualizing from your script. Did you see it a particular way, or did a lot of that come out of working with your DP on the set?
I absolutely saw the film a certain way when writing. And in fact, I'm almost ashamed to say I didn't own the rights to the book when I wrote the script. I had read the book while in college, like I said before the film, and felt a really deep connection to it. And I had been struggling to get other movies made. And one day I just, I sat down and I kind of had this kind of growing need to exercise all sorts of demons and to get a bunch of stuff on the page. And I went back to the book, and I love Brett's writing and Bret Easton Ellis's writing, and feel a very deep connection to it. And so I just sat down, and I don't advise this to anybody who's, aspiring to make a film, or in fact making films. I just sat down and I adapted the book without owning the rights, and I just wrote a screenplay, never thinking that I would get to make the film. I just wanted to, for me, I became a writer out of necessity, not because I love writing. I, in fact, hate writing. I write because it's cheaper and easier than asking somebody else to do it for you. And so and also you maintain more control over it. And so sometimes when I write a script, and I have a number of scripts like this that that I've worked on, that I write them and I just put them into a drawer, because writing them is like making the movie. I shut my eyes and I watch the film And that was how this script was. I sat down and I wrote it, and I actually wrote in camera moves and another thing you should never really do while writing scripts. I would write in how the screen would fold together, the equipment that you would need to do it, the motion control equipment to do it. And I actually wrote it like a blueprint to make the film. And then I took the script and I put it in a drawer and figured, well, that's that. And figured nothing would ever come of it. And Greg Shapiro, the producer of this, he'd been trying to get another script that I've written and done this to. And again, I don't know why I do this, but I had this script about this hotel in Paris, the Hotel Lutetia, and I had always wanted to make a movie about this hotel because during the occupation of Paris, it was terrible things happened there, and you go there now and it's this beautiful, lavish hotel. It's an interesting story. So I wrote a script about that, and I put it in this drawer, and Greg kept trying to get that script, and I kept saying, no, 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 no. I'm not mature enough to make that movie. I'm going to leave that script in the drawer until I'm ready. And he said, well, what else do you have? And I said, well, here, read this. And I gave him Rules of Attraction. He was like, what the fuck, are you crazy? Why are you making this? And I said, well, I don't own the rights. I don't own the rights to the book. And so he went out, and amazingly, the rights had just become available, and optioned the rights to the book. And then we went to Lionsgate, who had just very successfully made American Psycho. And they agreed to make the movie. And in fact, I remember one of the executives asking me, Roger, do you think it would be possible if you could call this movie American Psycho 2, The Rules of Attraction? and I said, no, I can't do that. However, there used to be a whole bunch of scenes with Patrick Bateman, the brother of Sean Bateman in the film. And I actually removed them at a certain point purely for length, for purposes of length, because the movie was, it went on and on and on, and I would do things like I would write scenes that night and just show up on set and shoot additional scenes, and I shot so much footage for this, not to mention the 70 hours of digital video that I shot for the European sequence. And then I cut that into its own feature, and so it's like so anyhow. I don't even remember what the question was, but I wrote the script like a blueprint, absolutely, and I don't normally do that.
When you're writing material, interpreting it with such extremity characters, do you feel that you have to somehow go to extremes as well in order to interpret it truthfully, or is it you have to find some kind of balance within it in order to?
Well, if I understand the question, which is about interpreting intense emotions and do you live them or not? I guess it's sort of my life would be a lot easier if I would just make widgets, and I actually wish I was really good at that. I wish I could be a journeyman filmmaker because it would be much easier. It's a much easier existence. You just show up and you do your job and you shoot what you're going to shoot. And there's something either wrong with me or right with me that I'm not wired that way. I believe that you have to kind of lead a life separate from cinema, separate from movies, so that you have something to cultivate into your work. And whenever I make something, or really anything, I try very, very hard to project as much of myself into the material as possible. So, and as weird as it sounds, I try to actually embarrass myself a little. I want to, I like the idea that a movie makes you feel naked in front of the world, and it shows all your good sides and all your bad sides. And so when it comes to, writing kind of, I don't know, extreme characters or extreme situations, you draw from your life, and you put as much as you can in, but having said that, I know you've seen my first film. I've never robbed a bank and things like that. So you augment as you go. I don't know. Does that answer it at all? So.
And, yep.
Yeah, I haven't read the book, but I would be curious to know what your sense was as to how you took the original text and where you took it that was somehow stands apart from the original document.
You know, I've now adapted 3 Bret Easton Ellis novels. And each time I find that, and Brett and I write and see the world in very similar ways. I mean, I've adapted this. I adapted Glamorama, which I own the rights to, and I've recently been attached to Lunar Park, and I've written that, an adaptation of that. And each and every one of those, strangely enough, I mean, Brett writes about his life and then interprets it through, or I should say his observations, and then interprets it through, through these kind of stories. For example, American Psycho, which I didn't write, Brett used to live in the American Felt Building in New York, and he conceived of the entire book, American Psycho, during an elevator ride with Tom Cruise, who lived in the same building. And it was just, it was everything that he's a cynic. He's a cynic and a satirist, and he writes about the things that he observes in life that maybe he's participated in, also that disturb him, as a way to exercise things within him. And at that point, with American Psycho at least, it's about, it was a time in history when you were watching all sorts of disgusting behavior, and that was just how it manifested. I'm sorry, ask the question again.
Where,
Yeah.
So where did you
the
take
difference
the
between
film
how I
that-
would, how this and the book. So, the book goes on and on and on. It has a, there's an abortion in it. It's not about her losing her virginity. There's a number of differences in the book to the movie. And actually the book kind of goes on a little bit longer. And what I said earlier about kind of adapting material and taking it apart and then sort of assembling it back together into its own new form. When writing this, it was a matter of just kind of throwing everything out and just kind of completely re-envisioning it. And the most important thing to maintain when doing any adaptation is to stay true to the spirit of the material, to the ethic of the material. And I tried to make a film that would complement or try to, in a cinematic way, and Brett already writes in a very cinematic fashion, that would somehow capture the experience of reading his books. And so when I did this adaptation, in fact, when I do any adaptation, that was really the most important thing to me. And I remember when I made the film, I was really nervous about showing it to Brett. He's a very, very brutal critic, and he's been very hard on the other filmmakers who have adapted his work. And I made the film, and actually he was living in New York at the time, and I even called him up and talked to him a little bit about it, and he was like, I don't want to get involved, I don't want to be part of it. And I actually was trying to convince him to play Patrick Bateman, the American Psycho. And he's like, no, I would never do it. And he's like, I really can't get involved in this. It's too difficult for me. And I understand that. And so I went ahead and made the movie. And then during one very early screening of the film, when it was in rough cut form, the lights came up after screening it, and I saw that Brett was in the audience. I was like, like I got really scared. I kind of freaked out. I was like, oh no, what is he going to think? And he came up and he hugged me and he said, oh my God, you did it. You stayed true to me. You stayed true to the book. And I was like, but Brett, I changed so much. I made so many sweeping changes. And he said, yeah, but you stayed true to what was important. And you made it really cinematic. And he's been very generous with his appreciation for the film. Really grateful for my collaborations with Brett.
And we have to wrap this up, so we have one more question way in the back there. Yes?
I was wondering if you could talk about the process of filming the European sequence, and I was wondering if it's ever going to be possible for us to see the full-length cut.
Yeah, I show it from time to time, and I've actually just been asked by the Locarno Festival in Switzerland to show it, and I'm flirting with the idea. The problem with me screening it and showing it. For a long while, I had ethical issues with showing it, because and maybe I should talk about how I shot that sequence. I kept a diary when I traveled across Europe, and it was literally like, I'm in Greece, and woo, and they're breaking plates on my head, and now I'm in, Pamplona, and oh my God, I'm getting run down by bulls. It was like this kind of crazy diary, and out of that diary came actually a lot of Killing Zoe, and then this as well. And I noticed that in Brett's book, The Rules of Attraction, there was a single chapter that was written exactly like my diary, and it was a European vacation. And it was written much in the style that that Kip Pardue does the narration in the film. And so what I did was I took Brett's writing, and then I took my diary, and I kind of put them together and in the script. And I wrote, and I remember the dialogue in that. It was very confusing for people, especially for the guys at Lionsgate Films who made the movie, because the script was formatted very strangely. It was not like a normal screenplay, and the dialogue is normally the margins are very narrow and generally rests in the center of the page. And in this case, the dialogue was just a giant 2-page block of text, from end to end of the page, with Victor on top. And the dialogue was meant to serve as both the description, from what we were supposed to shoot, as well as what he was supposed to say. Then after we finished shooting, and remember, this is right after 9/11. In fact, this is October. It was October of 2002 and 2001. I'm sorry. And I took Kip, and this was the last portion we shot, and Lionsgate said there is no way to budget this. This is an impossible sequence to shoot. This alone is the entire budget of your film. It's impossible to do. And I couldn't convince them that it could be done. And so what I did was Greg Shapiro and I paid for it ourselves, and just to prove it. And after we finished shooting, we took Kip Pardue and like a Sony, what was it, a PD-150, a PAL PD-150. So this is, remember, this is like 10 years ago. And a bunch of video, and it was just Greg Shapiro, me, and Kip Pardue. And I told Kip, I want you to remain in character from the moment we get on the airplane to the moment we return. And we were going to shoot for about 2.5, almost 3 weeks. And I said, I just want you to be Victor the entire time. And Kip is he's not like Victor at all. He's a very sensitive, actually compassionate guy. He's a really nice fellow. And but he had to become this character. And so what we would do is we would just, we would find there was no script. We kind of had a general idea to begin with, but as I told him, I wanted him to remain in character and to never break character. If he felt like, I'm going to Dublin, suddenly we were going to Dublin. There was no, there was no fixed plan. It was sort of like, let's just let it happen. And I would just follow him with this camera. And I have to tell you, it's really hard for 2.5 weeks to hold your arm up like this, like holding a camera. You think, oh, it's not so hard, it's not so difficult, but it's really difficult. Actually, it's really exhausting. And so I would shoot all day long constantly. I was shooting constantly. I shot about 70 hours of digital video, just following him, shooting him everything. So we'd go to a Ford model party, and he'd be hitting on girls, and they'd be all, because Kip used to be a model, and he's a good-looking guy, and I look, I'm like, they would see me and go, fucking paparazzi, and I'm just like trying to follow him around, and we would shoot and shoot and shoot, and then at a certain point we would stop and say, okay, it's not Victor, and it's actually Kip Pardue, the actor. I'm Roger Avary, and Greg Shapiro would step out. This is Greg Shapiro, the producer. I had a tape that I brought with me with some scenes from the movie to show them that we were really shooting a movie. So this is the movie, we've already shot it, and I would show them if they needed the convincing a little bit. And we carried with us a stack of release forms, and not a single person, I think actually maybe one, when we first landed. Almost not a single person said no. Everyone signed, no problem. I mean, we were shooting in customs, you know, which you can't do now. They'll shoot you dead if you try. We shot inside the Vatican. We shot everywhere. I shot orgies. I shot, you know, I told Kip, I said, I want you, you know, I'm going to be there with the camera, and whether, you know, whether you're eating, shitting, fucking, whatever it is, I'm going to be there with a macro lens, you know, shooting it. And I was, you know, I shot constantly. And when I was done, I cut all the footage down to this sequence, which is about, I think, 4 minutes. And, you know, and while my editor was working on editing the film, and because this was edited in my home, while she was cutting on the film, I was working on cutting the European sequence. And shortly after we finished the movie, I looked at all the footage and I was like, God, it's like I've got whole dialogue sequences, and there's like, and I shot it in a way where I was just going for like little shortcuts. But when I looked at it, it was like, oh, there's all sorts of stuff that's going on, and there's this very strange atmosphere of, because it was post 9/11, where everything was very strange. People were talking about terrorism, and in the middle of this, I was also, while traveling, I was introduced to the book Glamorama, which I hadn't read at that point yet. And Glamorama, it's almost what it's about. It takes place, you know, during, you know, it's about a model who's traveling through Paris, and he has a camera crew following him, and he gets involved with terrorism. And so anyhow, I bought the rights to the book immediately, because I realized, oh my God, I'm living that right now. And anyhow, that was sort of the process of shooting it, and I just kind of cut it all together. And when we came back, both Kip and I had this weird decompression time, because he kind of was Victor at that point, and he had to kind of get Victor out of his system. And I also was like a little bit like Victor, because, you know, I've been looking through the eye of the camera, like constantly walking around him like this, and, you know, shooting everything. And both of us sort of had this decompression period where we had to rewire ourselves to take Victor out of us. Because it's, you know, when Victor's not a sensitive guy. He's, you know, he uses people. And so for many years after I made this film, I would only show it to friends, because I felt ethically strange about it. These people had signed a, you know, release forms, completely releasing their you know, their image rights. And I thought that that was fine for everything that they did, because everything that you saw happened for the most part. I just felt strange, because when I edited it into a film, I kind of created a narrative that didn't exist before that. And I just felt strange, like I had been really using people. But the truth is, the reason I don't show the film so much is because there's so much music in the movie. The movie is almost a musical. It's like wall-to-wall music, and I use lyrics from songs as a way to tell the story. And so there's some music rights issues that I'm yet to hurdle. So eventually I think I will show it. Actually, Metropolitan Video, which is a company in France, just offered to pay for all of the music rights if I would allow them to release it on DVD in France. So I guess it can't be too far away to release it here. So that would be nice.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. Thank you all.